What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Brazos Sports Prepscast, a podcast about high school football here in the Brazos Valley. I'm Alex Miller with the Eagle, back with the Eagles high school sports team. We got Andrew Tenio and Jake Weiss. What's up, guys?
I'm just excited for the year. Everything, back in the podcast room, it's starting to feel a little more real now. It's been feeling real for the coaches with scrimmages and media days and all that, but it's feeling more real now when I walk in this room. Like, wow, we're really almost here.
I just can't believe it's here. I mean, I told Franklin football players this the ones that play baseball, I told them this at the media day. I was like, didn't I just see you guys holding up a state trophy? Like, what's going on? Yeah, I can't believe it's this fast. It's already here.
Well, here we are, another season in the Brazos Valley. Guys, I don't know about you. To me, it's shaping up to be what I think will probably be a pretty strong season within Bryan College Station, and then got some area teams that have some high hopes as well. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to answer what is one key question for each of the local teams heading into the season, and then we'll touch on some area teams we think can make some noise this year. So we'll go from largest to smallest. We'll start with the Bryan Vikings. Guys, what do you all see as one key question that the Vikings are trying to answer going into this season?
I think defensively will be a big thing that I'm keeping an eye on. That's a team that lost a decent amount of starters last year. Curious what the replacements will look like. A Nate Murphy replacement, a Tate Allen replacement. It's part of the excitement, though, of getting to see these teams. You get to see new people kind of shine. And defensively as a whole, I'm just really curious to see kind of where they go, what direction they go in with a decent amount of guys leaving graduation, but also some guys that can get a chance to shine.
Yeah, Jake?
Oh, man, good answer by Andrew. That was mine. No, I think I'll switch to the other side of the ball. I don't think it's a question per se, but I'm just excited to see the offense kind of in year two, specifically quarterback Boone Turner. It's something that it's funny, you kind of sit there and we're getting ready for, like media day, for example. You kind of start to look back on stuff. And I kind of forgot, Boone, last year was his first year at 6A. He went from 4A Caldwell all the way to 6A. And so I'm really excited to see that offense is going to be real veteran. I think Bryan's offense has got 9 guys coming back, which, I mean, that's you're 2 starters away from being a full offense back. But specifically for Boone, I'm excited to see what he looks like in year 2. From what I've heard, I've talked with him, I've talked with Coach, even his teammates as well. Like, everybody just says he feels a lot more comfortable in year 2 in the system. So I'm excited to see Bryan's offense kind of take a step forward, and kind of piggybacking off of Andrew's point there. I think the offense is really going to need to step up potentially in the beginning, especially if the defense is still kind of coming along. They might be in some shootouts potentially, and as we all know, like, the offense is going to need to put up points to stay in it.
Yeah, Boone, big guy, really big guy walking around at media day. All right, A&M Consolidated, they made it to the regional final last year in Brandon Schmidt's first season with the Tigers. What are you guys seeing from Consol heading into this season?
I'll let you go first this time.
Oh, wow,
I'll take your thunder again.
Thanks, man. No, I think probably going to have the same point here on this one as well. I think defense specifically is a big thing for them. We all talked about it a lot on the podcast last year. That defense, to quote Alex, that defense was salty. Consol's defense was really good last year. And from what I've heard and from what we've all heard from players and coaches throughout the spring, the offseason, is, defense is still going to be pretty good. Secondary, I know they're still kind of figuring some things out, moving some guys around. Like, for instance, Cam Vines, he was running back last year. I think they've moved him to the secondary a little bit. Tank Hawkins is a guy that's going to be stepping up on the secondary. But, man, that front 7, that defensive line and those linebackers, they're really high on them. That's the big thing we keep hearing about is, like, Puna Faketi, Nazir Adams, Ethan Walton, Hagen Schmeller, just that kind of core nucleus. I could probably sit here and name all of them. I feel like I have them all up here. Maybe not. But, that front 7 is going to be ones I feel like we hear their name a lot. So the defense is something I'm really kind of keyed in on for Consol at the beginning here.
I'm curious how they're able to replenish the skill position. That was, I think, an underrated trait that, they lost some guys. They lost Bjork, they lost Kashawn Thomas, they lost a decent amount of running back. Trey Taylor. I'm very curious to see Colton Schmeller's an option. Darius Roberts is an option. I think it was Mooring at running back, I think, could be someone that could take some of that build early on. But I'm real curious to see how they replenish the depth at skill position, because obviously the offensive line grew out throughout the year, and you bring back a returning quarterback is great. So you have a good O-line come back, and you've got a good quarterback play. How can the quarterback be able to get more help outside of the offensive line, including the running back and receiver? So I'm curious about that.
I think a theme that we're going to see in Bryan College Station particularly, very strong quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
We already talked about Boone Turner, a really big kid. They're hoping he can take a step forward at Bryan. Will Hargett's a guy. He's a 3-year starter.
Yeah.
He started playing varsity football midway through his freshman year, and he's played a lot of games. And the Tigers got to feel really good about what they've got with Will, and going into year 2 in this system. Definitely a guy they're going to be counting on. You talk about, needing to replace some of the skill position. Colton Schmeller, he's got a cannon of a leg, but I'm sure they'd rather him be catching touchdowns instead of kicking field goals every drive.
Yeah.
So, I think the Tigers in College Station, who we're about to talk with, they're probably among the favorites in that region for sure, down at 5A Division I. Well, hey, College Station, they've kind of become a perennial favorite around these parts. It's year 3 under Stoney Pryor. What are you guys kind of thinking about the Cougars heading into this year?
You can go first, Andrew.
I'm gonna go with a niche, a very specific position. I'm curious who's gonna replace Peyton Cashin. I think he was a guy that got a lot of targets last year, a lot of reps. And a guy that I keep hearing about is Zach Kosher. I know it's one specific player, but Zach Kosher has been a guy I talked to Stoney this morning, matter of fact, and he talks about how he can kind of do a little bit of everything. He can run screens, he can run comebacks, he can run post routes, he can kind of do a little bit of everything. They always send him in motion sometimes. So I'm very curious. You got Verdugo, you got Xavier Vila, you got big body guys, but Zach Kosher in that slot I think could be a difference maker. He's a guy that I would expect to get a decent amount of targets in a position that is losing some targets from last year.
Man, well, I don't want to take like a cop out here or anything, but Alex, you wrote a season preview on the Cougars at Media Day, so I feel like you're better equipped to answer this question than me.
That's fair. I think my big question for the Cougars going into the season, how's the defense going to shape up, especially in the secondary? You've got a very solid guy with Braylon Wortham there. He's moving from corner to safety. You've got some guys that have had snaps at linebacker and a little bit on defensive line. They only returned 3 starters, though. So, how's that Cougar defense going to come along? We know the offense is probably capable of scoring quite a few points. They got a lot of weapons. Didn't even talk about running back. They got a 3-headed monster with Wilson Stapp, Aiden Martinez-Brown, and Connor Cashin, Peyton's cousin. So, I think the Cougars are going to be pretty good on offense. How are they going to come along on defense, though? I think if they can really find some guys to step into some key roles, especially in the secondary, I think the Cougars are gonna have a really good team again this season. So, okay, so Rudder, it's I think the vibe that I'm getting from Rudder is they playoffs is a very that's a visible goal that they think is attainable going into the season.
Yeah, Izar, I got to talk to Izar during May Day. They feel like this is the year. If there is a year, it is this year. And in terms of skill talent, they absolutely have it on offense. I mean, A.J. Morrison, the Cooks brothers, Caden Holmes, they've got a plethora of offensive talent. My question is can Jaquise get it to them? I think he's the do-it-all athlete. He can do a little bit of everything. It looks like he's going to be playing majority quarterback this year, so I'm very curious. Can they get him in space and get him going, but also make it an efficient offense from a passing perspective as well? That's one of my biggest questions. In terms of talent around it, no doubt about it. They've got some of the best in the area.
Ooh, man, I was going to talk about Rutter's offense, but you stole my thunder again. No, I think that's a good one, too. I think on the other side of the ball, like the defense is one that intrigues me for Rudder because we haven't heard a lot about them. Like in years past, it's been like, like my like 2 years ago, it was like, hey, we got a new quarterback. We're kind of trying to fill some holes on the offense. Defense is veteran, or defense was newcomers as well. Like 2 years ago, last year it was like, hey, it's a more veteran defense. this year, I feel like we kind of haven't heard a lot about the defense, which kind of intrigues me. Like, where are they at on that side of the ball? Because, last year's team, they had some close games. Like, you were at that Huntsville game. I think that was, 17-7 was the final?
And it was like a 4-point game going in the fourth quarter. They were back and forth.
And I know how they had some veterans on that defense last year, like Ryan Campbell, for example, in the secondary. I'm trying to think who's out. I guess we'll just stick with Ryan for now. I was trying to think of some of the. I'm blanking though, guys. It's only week 1. Give me some time.
Week 0.
Week 0. There we go. But no, the defense for me for Rudder is one where I'm kind of intrigued because we've heard things, we've heard kind of inklings, but we haven't really seen like the big picture, I guess, yet. Like we know one of the cooks. I think Brandon's on defense, Randon's on offense. Am I right about that?
They kind of
both
do some things both ways. If you do want one name though that I have heard is Demonte Wells, cornerback.
Wells. I was just about to mention him.
Actually, 6'3". They love his range. They love his speed. He's a guy that can make plays for them. So there's one player on defense you want to check for, and secondary may be my favorite position that I've seen. I've gotten to see saw their scrimmage last week. I've gotten to talk to them. Secondary is that position that could be fun for them. They could get some takeaways, and that should make some big opportunities for the offense.
Hey, that's good to know because, like I said, that's the thing I'm most interested with them is like we haven't really heard like it's kind of been hush hush on that side of the ball. Besides, Zamonte was mentioned as one of the players to watch, but other than that, it's been kind of a secret, I guess. I don't know if it's a secret weapon or if it's something they're still like, hey, we're still trying to figure some things out. Right.
I don't know if Rudder is going to compete for the district championship, but they've got to find ways to win some of those close games. They're in another 6-team district.
Yeah.
Brenham and Waco University seem to be kind of the two favorites in that district. But when you start looking at teams like Waco High, Killeen, one of the other Killeen schools, I mean, Rudder. I think Rudder's got to find a way to win some of those games in October that can really help them, get over the hump. And I think they're capable of doing it. I'm really fascinated to see what the offense looks like with Jaquise kind of probably running the show a little bit more. He is just such a playmaker with the ball in his hands. I mean, we've seen that the last 3 seasons. So Rudder's definitely on the verge of doing something a little special again this season. So, hey, another team that is probably on the verge of doing something special is Brazos Christian. Okay, you talk about dynamic offenses. Talking with Coach Washington, he's pretty juiced up about what the potential of his team may have. We go back to quarterbacks. Cooper Murr, he's the younger side of the town's quarterbacks, but even as a sophomore, he's got the potential to have another really good season coming into the year. And with guys like Jackson Caffey, Truitt, they've got a good line they're feeling pretty confident about with Ben Tillery and leading the way. So Brazos Christian, they're a team I think we're gonna look at mid-October going, hey, how about them Eagles, man?
Yeah.
I think they've got a shot to do something special. Got a really competitive district too. Hallettsville Sacred Heart and Brazos Christian, they're probably among the favorites. Shiner St. Paul always has a really good team. Central Texas Christian, they're a team that's actually beat Brazos Christian the last couple seasons, and I'm sure that's one that Brazos Christian has circled. A fun non-district game I think is going to be Brazos Christian versus Hearn.
Yeah.
That's going to be either week 2 or 3. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Brazos Christian's going to Hearn. Hearn, by the way, got the new stadium finished. That'll be cool to go see Woodfield all done with the new turf and everything. But I think for both of those teams, that's going to be a good measuring stick early. I think Hearn is a team that they've got a lot of athletes. It's just a matter of can they get those pieces to work together in a cohesive unit week after week. But I think Brazos Christian, they're a team. Several weeks down the road, we're going to look at being like, okay, this is a team that's got the makings to be a contender.
Absolutely. I kind of want to pivot towards the other local private. I want to go St. Joseph's. It's a
Yeah.
very interesting story to have a team that made the state semis last year and then new coach. new everything, new quarterback starting to come with Aiden Cruz, who was at Consol for the last couple of years. Very curious to see how that offense kind of goes. They bring back Niver, who was a big part of their passing game. Obviously, new coach in Mike Forgione. I think that's how you pronounce it. If not, apologize. So that's just one that I'm keeping an eye on. Of like they have had a lot of success over the past couple of years. Curious with some new pieces coming if they can continue that.
Well, speaking of those games, Alex, when you were talking about Hearn, it's funny when you said good non-district game. I thought we were going Brazos Christian Hearn, but another one that really was like exciting to me was Baytown Christian and St. Joe's. Speaking of St. Joe's in I think that's week 6. And if I can't remember right off the top of my head, I'll just call Peter Niver because I know he told me he's got that one circled. Because if you remember too, that's who knocked St. Joe's out of the playoffs last year. Former district foes. St. Joe's had already beat them, and then they get to the state semifinals there and lose to Baytown. So I know that's one. I mean, like I said, he told me that's one I've got circled. So that's going to be one. It's weird too that it's so late, week 6. But I know that's one they've got circled, and I'm thinking like in my head, I'm just kind of you're rubbing your hands together, going like, that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I was there for that game in Oakwood, and man, that was two just heavyweights just haymaking it out. So yeah.
Well, Baytown Christian, they got Allen Academy week 1. They're our final local team. We're gonna preview right here. I got a chance to talk to Coach Adams for the season. Allen Academy, they're gonna have a really small team. I think he's only got 11 guys, which you only need 6 and 6-man. But it's a team that they've got 3 really solid upperclassmen, and then it's a really young team after that. But it's a talented young bunch that they have high hopes for. I think the question is, how quick can those kids really come along, and who steps up to be, some of the key guys that they can depend on down the stretch of the season. Rusty Lee McMurray, he's a guy that has been a playmaker for them. Brockfield, he's a guy that we've talked about a lot on this podcast. They're going to kind of anchor that team. They lost Ethan Lucas at quarterback. Yeah. He was a stud for them. They're going to roll a young guy named Sawyer out there that they're really looking forward to see what he's got. So, I think a good thing for Allen Academy too is, they really had 2 heavyweights in their division the last 2 years with Conroe Covenant and Pasadena. And those 2 teams are out. Pasadena moved up. Conroe Covenant's actually playing 11-man. They're in Brazos Christian's district this coming season. So, realignment did them a little bit of favors. But I think that Allen Academy definitely has the makings of having a really good season. I think it's going to be interesting to see how some of those young guys can come along over the first few weeks of the year.
I just got to add, too, speaking of, talking about the new quarterback, it's going to just be kind of weird, like, when we preview Allen Academy St. Joe's, because I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, Ethan Lucas, wait, no, and then it's going to be like, oh, no, both have new quarterbacks, so that'll be a fun one to see, too, especially with, like you mentioned, Aiden Cruz, for me, coming down from 11, or coming from 11-man to 6-man. I think that'll be real interesting. Now, I know he got 7-on-7 and 6-on-6 in, and they think he's been doing a pretty good job there.
Well, who are maybe some area teams you guys kind of have your eye on heading into the year?
Ooh, I got one off the top of my head. I'm kind of stealing Alex's thunder, though, but Lexington.
Okay.
And I don't want to steal Alex's thunder because you wrote the really great preview story on them. So, I'll just ask you, Alex, what do you think about Lexington this year? You're kind of the expert here.
Lexington has had a really young team the last 2 years, and they've grown up really quick. Case Evans, he's transformed his body, going from a freshman starter that was about 5'11", weighed about $140. He's up to like 195. He's 6'3". I mean, he looks the part, right? We saw him at media day, and he looks like, an upperclassman quarterback who can be an all-district kind of guy. They've got some playmakers on both sides of the ball. They've got a lot of veteran guys. I think that they're gonna have a really hard region. But it's also a good district, so by the time they get to the playoffs, they'll be battle tested. Blanco's in their district. That'll be a really good matchup. Blanco's always got a good team. And then you look at the district that they're paired with. I mean, Tidehaven went to the state championship game last year because they beat Poth, who's also in that region. And Poth was in the state championship game, 2-3 years ago? So that's a really loaded region. And I think that Lexington has kind of been building toward this season. They're really focused on getting over the hump.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of their goal. And if they can get into a position where they're in a third or fourth round playoff game, I wouldn't count out the Eagles in a matchup like that.
And heck, that's where they went. It's funny you say get over the hump because you think back to last year too. They went 3 rounds last year, so you're like, man, how much further do you guys want to go all the way to Arlington then?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously everybody does, but it's like going further than that. Because I think they were one of the. I'm pretty sure Lexington, by the time we got to the third round, I think we had 4 or 5 teams left at that point, and they were one of the leaders in the clubhouse there. Because I was real impressed with them at State 7-on-7. I know it's 7-on-7. People are going to say, oh, that doesn't translate, but I know it was funny because, I think they played Tidehaven too in State 7-on-7 because Tidehaven had won the Division III title 2 years in a row, back-to-back, going for that third, and Lexington came out on top. So if that was a little sneak preview there, Alex, of the playoffs, let me just put it this way. It was a good game.
Fair enough. Well, hey, I don't know how we've made it this far into the podcast without mentioning the Franklin Lions. Speaking of teams trying to get back to Arlington, Franklin, they've made the state championship game 4 years in a row. This is going to be a very different looking Franklin Lions team. Obviously, the stud senior class that really, was the group that they rode a lot through that really incredible run. A lot of those guys are gone, but got a lot of good talent returning, including Jaden Jackson at running back.
Yeah, I was gonna say I talked to the players and Coach Fannin at media. Well, Coach Fannin later on, but the players at media day. And one of the things that really intrigues me about Franklin is we all know their deal, right? Slot T Mafia. They're gonna run the ball, gonna make you stop them on the ground. And you look at Franklin, and this year they're only bringing back 3 returners on the offensive line. So that's the big thing for me is like, man, what are they gonna do there? But the good thing is Coach Fannin said this, hey, we've been battling. I talked to him right after fall camp started. Hey, we've been battling. We got a lot of guys we're working on there. And from what I've seen and heard, first scrimmage went pretty well. Haven't heard anything about the second scrimmage yet, but signs seem to be positive because you got to think too. It's funny. It's like it's going to be newcomers, but you got to remember too what Franklin is. They've been able to practice. They've been practicing longer than everybody else for the last 4 years. So those guys may be young. Some of those guys may be younger, but they've got plenty of experience just through practice. And I thought that was something really interesting because when I was talking with Coach Fannin, he said that to me, and I was getting in my head trying to go back. I was like, yeah, you're right, Coach. Like you guys have practiced for 4 years in a row. You've been the last team, one of the last 2 teams practicing week in and week out. So even if these guys are young, maybe a sophomore or junior here, that maybe a JV guy from last year. They've been getting plenty of reps, though, in practice. So I'm real excited to see kind of just the cohesion there because it'll be a new quarterback, too. I don't think we've heard yet who it'll be between Noah Tart or Walker Anderson at quarterback. But that's something really intriguing. And like you said, they got Jaden as well. So, I mean, hey, even if his offensive line is still coming together at the beginning, Jaden's going to find a hole and get some yards.
I think there's something to be said, too, about, you've been to a state championship game 4 years in a row. That's kind of the expectation. They understand what it takes to get there. And, if you're those kids, this is your chance to do it.
Yeah.
They've probably been chomping at the bit to be the guys that get a shot to be out there on Friday night, getting to lead the charge.
And they're going to jump in week 1 with China Spring.
Yeah.
That's going to be a great first test.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out a lot real quick about what Franklin's made of. They've got a really good non-district schedule. Got Salina in that neutral site game. And yeah, China Spring obviously, one of the better teams in the Waco area have been in the last few years.
And former district foe Lorena.
Former district foe Lorena, who has moved up to Class 4A this year. A team I've got my eye on is Bremond. I think Bremon's got a shot to make some noise. Tank Scott, solid running back. Gonna have a new quarterback. I think it's gonna be a little bit of different look there at Signal Caller, but Bremond's a team year in year out we can always count on to have a good team. And I know they got Mart to deal with, but all it takes is one good game in the playoffs, and you're on your way. So
I talked to Coach Kozowski during 7-on-7. He was talking about the quarterback situation, but also how excited he is for these young guys at skill position. I think some guys outside of Tank Scott will also do some really big stuff for them. And then obviously between Sam Kozowski and then Braylon Garcia, the quarterback. I think he's leaning more towards Garcia.
Braylon Estrada.
Or Braylon Estrada, excuse me, Braylon Estrada. They have leaned more towards Estrada, right? Is that correct?
Man, I feel like we need to get our former summer intern Luke White on the podcast.
I think Luke would know.
Phone a friend.
I think he's leaning towards Estrada, so maybe they go with him. But point being, very interested with their skill set, and then who's gonna be a quarterback. So,
I think Madisonville is an intriguing team.
Yeah.
Obviously, they got Ty Williams, lost Lorenzo Johnson to
Texas Tech.
Yeah. But when you got a good quarterback, you got a good defense, you got a shot to win. They're in a really hard district, though. I think Belleville is among the state contenders again this year.
That's when we'll kind of figure out what Madisonville's made about with that game, I feel.
Yeah. And so I think that, Madisonville is definitely a team to watch. I think another team to watch, Iola.
Yep.
I think Iola is a team that is on the come up. And another team that I think might be a little surprised about, Leon. I think Leon's a team that has a chance to make some noise down in that district in 2A Division 1.
Man, I'm glad I'm not the only Leon truther on the podcast, and Iola too. I was glad you mentioned them as well, Alex. I was like, man, Alex gets a gold star from me. Leon's an interesting one for me especially. Heck, week 1 is interesting because it's an all Brazos Valley matchup. Leon Snook. I know for Snook, new head coach. So it'll be interesting to see from both perspectives what they look like because especially with Leon, they're changing the offense this year.
Mm-hmm.
Made the playoffs the last 2 years under Coach Derek Thomas, the former alum at Leon. But they're going to they were a spread offense. Now they're just going to be a ground and pound, run the ball. So I'm really interested to see. I know the players told me like, hey, once we get through those 2 first scrimmages, we're going to have the offense right and ready. So it'll be really interesting to see. I guess post week 1. What it looked like, what we kind of hear about it. Heck, even just to see the final score will be like, okay, maybe they got the offense figured out.
One of my underrated questions for some of the area teams, is this the year for Anderson Shiro? I think that's a big question for me. They bring back the entire offensive line. They've got good quarterback play. Their bread and butter is defense. They brought a new defensive coordinator. I don't want to butcher. I think it's a 6A school. The defensive coordinator's coming in. I don't actually know.
I want to say it was one of the Tomball schools.
Tomball Memorial was what I was thinking. I'm really excited to see what they do there with that much pieces coming back. They had a great year last year. Can they get over the playoff hump? That's one of my biggest questions in the area. But that's the team I'm excited to see, and they're going to get a good competition with Crawford, which I think a few years ago made state.
Yep.
So,
yeah. Well, guys, any final thoughts heading into the season?
Super stoked.
I just can't believe it's here. Like, I'm still just shocked, man. Like it's already here.
Well,
summer flew by.
Get ready, Jake. It's coming at you fast. But
Got that right.
Well, hey, we hope you enjoy your final Friday night without high school football until Christmas. And be sure to check theu.com. We got all of our season previews up on the website. So get your fix of high school football this weekend. We'll hopefully be back next week previewing week 1's matchups here in the Brazos Valley.